Good morning, everyone. So, I want to ask you something. How was your relationship with your parents? For some of us, we can say like, "Oh, we have a great relationship. We were always very close," and some of us could say like, "Well, I don't have the best relationship with my parents." But that's the different way that the Lord used in our lives to be here, like to be closer to Him. And now, I remember we did this proverb in chapter 3, verse 12, when they say, "For the Lord corrects those He loves, just as a father corrects a child in whom He delights." And I really enjoyed this proverb because if I remember my family, I remember when I was trying to learn how to cook my own food. It was so bad. It was so bad. I remember my first food. It was bad. So I remember my mom, like she was trying to teach me in a lovely way. It was awesome because it was in a lovely way, so I could be like very relaxed and not like nervous or stressful for that. So I remember when she said like, "Oh, that food is good, but you have to use just less of salt." I was like, "Okay," or "You have to use more salt." Or "Don't use onion in sweet foods, please." And it was very good to learn how to cook my own food because now in the college I could use it and I could cook my own food and I don't have to spend a lot of money in a restaurant. So I remember my dad trying to teach me how to change a tire, and it was so good because he was in a lovely way too, and it was awesome because now I know how to do that. But I remember he was mad. The last times he was like very mad, like, "Hey, you have to do this in this way." Yeah, I know, but I can't. I was like 10 years old, so it was I well, it was not the best thing, but now I know how to do that. And like a month ago, I was with one of my friends, and she did. I don't know what she did with his car, and the tire was boom. And I had to change it, and I was remember my dad, like, "Oh, I know how to do this because my dad was teaching me," and that makes me think how the Lord is teaching us to do different things. Like we can have mistakes in our lives. We are a human. We still being a sinners, and we still having a lot of mistakes in our lives. But the Lord is trying to teach you. The Lord is trying to correct you in a lovely way. He will use a lovely ways for you to change your mistakes. So when the Lord is trying to teach you in a lovely way, you could say like, "Oh, that is awesome," because now I know how to do this, and I have not to have a bad moment like when I was learning. But also that makes me think in Proverbs chapter 22 in the verse 15, and it says, "A youngster heart is filled with foolishness, but physical discipline will drive it far away." So that makes me think in when I don't understand how to change a tire. My dad was mad, and now he was teaching me in a different way. He was teaching me with a firm hand. And that makes me think in Paul. How was the life of Paul? How was Paul's life? I remember he was in the persecution. He was the first one who said, like, "I don't like these Christian people. I want these Christian people in the jail. I want these Christian people dead." So that makes me thinking how the Lord is trying to change our lives. Sometimes in a lovely way, but sometimes he has to use another ways, a firm hand. So with Paul, when he was playing, he can't see anything. So he went to one of the apostles, and he helped him. So that makes me think in Apasco in Mexico. I have a friend. His name is Marvin. I really love that guy. He's very nice. He's very kind. He's awesome. If you know Marvin, you know that that guy is awesome. But it wasn't the same 3 years ago. He had problems with drugs. He had problems with alcohol. He was spending the night in the street. Sometimes he told me like, yeah, I never went to my house for a week because I was drunk all the time or I was taking drugs. And that makes me think how the Lord was using his life to change something. 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, I was in my house in Mexico with the Amers. We were watching a movie, and the preacher in Apasco called me. Hey, can you all come to the church? Yeah, sure. What's going on? Do you remember Marvin? He wants to be Baptist. I was like, okay, I wish my first reaction was like, wow, that is awesome. Another soul for the Lord. It was not my reaction. My reaction in that moment, honestly, it was like, I don't know if that is true. I don't know if that is for the right reasons. I don't know if he will be always in the church. Because he's 31 in this moment, and he told me like he started to take drugs and drink alcohol when he was 13 or 14. So it was like the most of his life he was using drugs. So for me it was like, I don't know if that is true. And I was talking to him before to come to him, and I say like, bro, I'm so sorry. I really think it was not for the right reasons. I'm so sorry. So now Marvin is one of the most constant people in the church. He's always like, hey, how can I help you? Hey, can I have the small group in my house? I want to have everyone in my house preaching the word and singing and just do something for the Lord. And that makes me think how the Lord is using his life. Because even when he was drunk, when he was taking drugs, the Lord was always with him. And even when the Lord wasn't in his heart, when he was like, I don't know who's Jesus, I don't know who's the Lord, but the Lord, Jesus, he knew who was Marvin. And he knew everything about him. And he was like, okay, I can use his life to change something. So he was learning about the Lord. He was learning how to use the gospel with a firm hand. Jesus was being maybe hard with him. Maybe he was doing everything with a firm hand. But now he's very close to the Lord. He's one of the closest guys I ever seen to the Lord. He's always like, oh yeah, that is good, but let me see in my Bible something about that. I was like, oh, I never think in the Bible could say something like that. That's true. And that makes me thinking how the Lord understands what you need. Because the Lord, he knows you better than you know yourself. So he knows when you have to learn in a wonderful way. He knows when you have to learn in a lovely way. But also he knows when you have to learn with a firm hand. Sometimes I need to be in a lovely way. I have to be in a lovely way, and then I can understand. But sometimes, when I'm not understanding in a lovely way, he has to use a firm hand to me. So I want you to think that the Lord, he has a different plans for you. If you are imagining something for your life, the Lord, he's going to say yes, but probably he's going to say no. And sometimes it's not he's saying no. He's saying like, just wait for something else, something bigger. So we have to learn that the Lord is teaching us always in a lovely way, or with a firm hand, but He's always teaching us, and He always loves us. God bless you.
I have a very, very serious, very important question to ask all of you. Who here has watched Avatar: The Last Airbender? Yes. The show, of course, because we're not going to talk about that abomination of a movie. So I was watching Avatar the other day, and I think it was season 1, episode 11, and the episode was called The Great Divide. And it was between these two tribes, the Ganjin and the Zhang, and these two tribes have been at war and just feuding with each other since they became tribes. Well, they're traveling, and they both had to cross through the canyon, and they had to do it together because that was the only way for them to get through. So they kind of sucked it up, and they're like, okay, I guess we can go through together. But the episode eventually got to the point to where they kind of split off, went their own separate paths, and we got to hear the origin of each tribe's story. But what we found out is that each tribe had a different story of what actually happened, and that the only thing in common was that the other tribe wronged the other tribe. And so they finally met back up together, and then Aang, who's the Avatar, the main character of the whole show, got to hear both sides of the story, and he said, that's not actually what happened. You guys have the story all wrong. Here's what actually happened. And the tribes heard this, and they decided that, okay, if that's actually what happened, then we really have no reason to be angry with each other, to be conflicting with each other. And so the episode ends, and we see them kind of walk off into the forest, side by side, hand in hand, all together. And we can see Aang in this situation. He was being a peacemaker, in which that peacemaking was a topic I was given to speak over. And what does Jesus say about peacemaking? Well, Matthew chapter 5, Jesus on the Sermon on the Mount, verse 9 says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God." And, a peacemaker, someone who seeks peace, in harmony with other people. But can you think of a time where maybe you weren't seeking peace in a situation? Well, to answer my own question, yes, I have a younger brother. And sometimes we wouldn't always get along. And a situation that would commonly occur is he would say something that I would just think is just completely wrong, and I'd let him know that. But then he'd be able to back it up with facts, evidence, and he would actually be right. But as the older brother, I just felt obligated to disagree with him, continue just to argue with him. But the outcome of the situation could have just been easily avoided. We wouldn't have been arguing with each other. We would have kind of gone on our day without just being angry with each other. If I was just said, you know what, you're right, I was wrong, and we could have just gotten along. 1 Samuel chapter 25, we have the story of David, Abigail, and Nabal. David, who eventually became King David, Nabal, who the Bible describes as being harsh and badly behaved, and then his wife Abigail, who the Bible describes as being intelligent and beautiful. Well, David heard of Nabal, and he sent some men to go greet him. So the men went to greet Nabal, and Nabal's response to this greeting was, "Oh yeah, David, the son of Jesse. I've never heard of him. I have no idea who that is." So the men reported back to David, and I guess David felt some type of way about that disrespect, and he just gathered 400 men to go kill Nabal and all of his servants. But Abigail heard about what was going on, and she decided, yeah, I would really prefer if that didn't happen. So she decided to do something about that. She, gathered some food, just, I guess, enough for 400 men, and went to go confront David. And she got to David, and David heard her out, took the offering, and he decided, you know what, Abigail's right. There's no need to do this. I'll leave the judgment up to God, in which God did take judgment upon Nabal. He killed him. And what we can see from the story is just what the outside looking in, the actions that Abigail took to go confront David. But what did it take Abigail from the inside? Well, I think to go seek peace. Well, I think it took some initiative, first off, because she knew something bad was coming, and she decided that I don't want that to happen. So she went and did something about it. I also think it took a lot of courage, because she knew 400 men, 400 soldiers were coming her direction with murder on their mind. And I don't know about y'all, but if I knew 400 guys were coming my direction with the intent to kill, I'd probably be going the other direction. I wouldn't be going towards them to, I don't know, try to reason with them. I don't know, that just seems terrifying to me. And even looking back in the situations with my brother, just a little bit of humility to put my pride aside and just say, you're right, I'm wrong. And everything would have just been good between him and I. I think we can all agree that peace is a good thing. And I can only imagine that throughout this lesson while I've been speaking, you may have thought of maybe a person or a situation that you could have handled better if you're seeking peace. Or maybe you even currently have a situation on your mind that maybe I have the opportunity to go seek peace. Or maybe even you know of a situation between maybe a brother, sister, family member, a loved one that they're conflicting with another that you could go offer your assistance to. Because sometimes all it takes is that an outside party, a third person to be there, kind of as a mediator to bring everybody together. Kind of like we saw with Aang. Those two tribes' problems weren't his problem, but he still brought them together in peace, and it turned out good for everybody. And I'm an aimer, and I love my classmates, but I don't always get along with everybody. Sometimes we'll disagree on something or we'll argue with something. And that's just kind of how it is. Even with the people that we're closest with in our life, we're going to disagree on something. We're going to have conflict. And I know that maybe sometimes seeking peace with those people or just anybody in general can be maybe somewhat scary or intimidating. Maybe like you got 400 men coming your way. You kind of got that picture going. But I want to challenge us to be like courageous. Take the initiative, be humble, or whatever it takes to have peace with one another. Because as we can see from the stories of the episode of Avatar and the story of Abigail, that when peace takes place and everybody's peaceful, it benefits everybody who's involved.